I want to know what your reaction was.
Completely not expected at all, because they waited so fucking long.
Let's do this! They haven't seen each other in 20 years. They're returning to their hometown to finish the ultimate pub crawl.
This is our chance to finally conquer the Golden Mile. 12 pubs, 12 pints.
And this time, they're going to make it to the last pub, the World's End.
Let's go! I got a better idea. Climb down the drain pipe.
So, Tig, you watched The World's End, directed by Edgar Wright and starring Simon Pegg and Martin Freeman and a bunch of other guys. Before we get right into it, I think it's important to say that this episode is going to contain spoilers, but this is a movie where it is kind of important to understand that there's spoilers. And if you haven't seen it and you don't know too much about the movie, you might want to skip it. So, I want to know what your reaction was in that scene.
In the bathroom scene. So I didn't expect that. Oddly enough, I didn't think there was going to be a twist or something. So when I'm watching this, there's a moment in the bathroom where you think that it's going to be a mix of generations, like this older guy who's trying to relive his youth. A teenager walks in and the kid won't talk to him, so he thinks he's being a snob. And then all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose and they're having a fight. And a second later, the kid's head's getting cracked open and blue goo is ripped off. He looks like a Lego man, basically.
Yeah.
Completely not expected at all, because they waited so fucking long.
Yeah, that's one of I love that they really took their time to get into the characters and set up the whole scenario and who each one of them were and the relationships, and it really kind of eases you into the idea that it's going to be this movie about men grappling with middle age, and especially Simon Pegg's character, who's grappling with the idea that he hasn't moved on from his youth yet, which ultimately that is what the movie's about.
So I'm thinking like, okay, this is going to be like one of those movies that get into some fights, some weird shit happens, whatever. I did not expect blue goo aliens.
The movie is about a group of 5 friends, middle-aged friends, who get together one last time for an epic night of drinking. Not all of them want to get together. One friend got them all together. But about 40 minutes into the movie, there's this sudden left turn that it takes, and it becomes this whole other thing.
I have always been a fan of those movies. I loved From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah, that's one that's one that I could certainly see people like thinking this similar to.
At the very end of it, it had a very Hitchhiker's Guide feel to it. It goes on for like 15 minutes. They're kind of arguing with each other.
This is pointless. We're gonna get out of here.
Yeah, and it was funny because the whole theme was that the king is always right. He's always right. You can't ever win an argument with him. So it actually gets to the point where even the alien is sick of his shit and he just is like, fine, we're leaving.
It's pointless arguing with you. You will be left to your own devices.
Really?
Yeah.
Fuck it.
We all have that friend.
I was thinking that while I was watching. I'm like, we all have that friend.
Throughout the beginning portion, you're watching King. You kind of want him to just get his shit together. You've got these 4 dudes here, and it's nice to see the 5 of you back together. But geez, dude, you are just acting like a kid. You're a moron. This is idiotic. What you're doing.
Then onto the old familiar, the famous cock, the cross hands, the good companions, the trusty servant, the 2-headed dog, the mermaid, the beehive, the king's head, and the hole in the wall for a measure of the same. All before the last bittersweet pint in that most fateful terminus, the World's End.
But yeah, then ultimately it's like, when it takes that big turn and it turns out to be Invasion of the Body Snatchers, he's kind of the ringleader only because he's the only one manic enough to accept the idea that we just have to plow forward.
Yeah, if it wasn't for him, they'd all be dead. I was also glad that they didn't have him get together with the love interest. I was really glad that it ended up being between the other friend and her. And it just stayed that way, and that they actually had a quick conversation where she tells him, I like you, I just don't like you.
They made an interesting choice in that the King character never really grows up, and he never really gets any sort of redemption. They quote unquote save the world from this alien invasion only because he's a stubborn asshole and the aliens leave. This, of course, destroys the world and upends all of society. King goes on, like in that's sort of the coda in the end, the show where everyone is. he really hasn't changed. He's still just a rebellious asshole who won't follow the rules. Now now, of course, afterwards, he sort of seems like he's on the side of good, because he's against the bigots, and he's going into the bars full of bigots, and
Yeah, we don't serve blanks here.
Yeah, but he's still just sort of the jackass.
Yeah, he's the same guy.
He never ends up having to change. The world changes for him, which is ridiculous.
That was the one thing I didn't get. Martin Freeman, did he get snatched during that night?
You could see the scene when it happened. He goes off to the bathroom by himself. Yeah, and of course, then when he comes back, he's all of a sudden enthusiastic about what's going on.
Right.
But yeah, somehow they get like the essence of the person into the other.
Yeah, so when they run into the three girls who I think they called like the something strawberry sandwich, some kind of, because there was two blondes and a redhead.
The marmalade sandwich.
They run into them, but they run into them and they still look the same as they did when they were in high school.
This is one of like 3 movies that him and Simon Pegg did together with Edgar Wright. They call it the Cornetto trilogy.
So I was trying to do a little bit of research after I saw it. And I was like, oh, so they consider this part of even though it's not a trilogy in the sense of a true connected trilogy, but
really the only thing that connects them is these brief references to this ice cream brand.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that's where the name comes from. But yeah, the one that most people have probably seen is Shaun of the Dead, because it was a really beloved sort of a comedic take on zombie movies. And then the other one, which I think you would probably like even more, maybe even more than this one, is Hot Fuzz. Edgar Wright has this really rapid fire directorial style it's very quick and fast editing and really music heavy. There's always a lot of music cues. And this movie's no different, especially in the beginning.
Yeah, it was kind of surprised how long some, like when they were strolling down the streets.
Whiskey bar.
Yeah, that I was like, it went on for a long time. Like there was actually a point where I was like, oh, I'm never going to be able to use this footage in this edit, because there's so much the songs just playing forever.
All that music is only in the first section, and then in the second section of the movie, except when they're like at the dance club and stuff, it's like more traditional science fiction movie score.
The whole bigger than life kind of music starts kicking in and stuff, and all the fights and everything.
Yeah, the fights were ridiculous. Like just
the fact that they like knew all these moves in the karate. Yeah. I mean, I get like Andy was using wrestling moves. So I was like, yeah. Okay, I get it. Maybe he was a big wrestling fan or whatever, but it was pretty funny with the fight scenes.
And and of course, I mean, it's one of these things you can't think too hard about it, because in the first bathroom scene, King has a really difficult time and he's almost killed by this first one. But then in later scenes, you're right, they can fight dozens of them. Like a lot of movies, it floats sort of these power levels, because when they need you to be able to fight a dozen bad guys, you can. But then later they're in that park and the one friend is sort of getting surrounded and they're like, oh, there's too many of them. Wait a minute, just 5 minutes ago you fought a whole bar of them.
Very convenient.
That was actually my favorite character, is the guy who died there. I don't remember his name, but
yeah, he was really funny because he was quiet and nerdy. The one that has the problem where he keeps running into his bully and he like pounds the crap out of his bully.
yeah. And I think he also had the movie's most heartfelt scene when he first talks about the bully. It's right. The bully comes and sees him in the bar and asks to borrow the chair and walks away. And this guy's whole trauma isn't being bullied so terribly by him in his youth. It's the fact that the bully didn't even recognize him. He just looked through him and just walked away. And that was like probably the one like true heartfelt scene in the movie where you're like, oh man, that's really rough.
And then of course King ruins it by immediately interrupting it and acting like he didn't even pay attention to the entire conversation.
I kind of wonder what they were looking for in making King so abrasive.
He's the exaggerated version of what we said earlier, where we all have that one friend, and he's like the turned up to 11 version of that friend that we all know.
We're not here as your friends. We're just your fucking enablers.
Yeah. Enabler. It's a funny word, isn't it? Enabler.
You don't need us to help you get fucked up. You have done a perfectly good job so far on your own.
Yeah, and they really reinforced that in the beginning too, where he's still driving the same car that he was at the time. The mixtape that's in the car is still the same mixtape from back then. When Martin Freeman's sister, the Rosamund Pike character, comes in, he immediately is like, she goes off to the bathroom, and they of course, had a not a fling, but a liaison.
Yeah, when they were younger.
So she goes up to the bathroom and he's immediately like, oh, well, I guess it's time. Like, you know, as if
He's like, you gave me the sign. And she's like, what sign? He's like, you went to the bathroom.
yeah.
I've seen you in 20 years. Do you really think I'm going to have sex with you in the ladies' toilet?
Well, the disabled is out of order.
Oh, shit.
Huh. So do you want it?
No, it's not that he's nasty, because he's not a prick exactly. He just needs to grow the hell up.
When he comes back from trying to hook up with the sister again in the bathroom, she gives him the out of order sign, like he was being out of order. And then he's just wearing it as like with pride or whatever, just wearing it because he's a dunce. And then later on, he shows up, and after they beat those kids up in the bathroom and they don't want to get seen and they kind of want to leave, he puts the out of order sign on the bathroom so that no one will go in there and notice it. And it seems so small, but that made me appreciate it even more, like the writing and everything.
A lot of the pub names all have something to do with what's going on or the story, including, of course, the obvious one, the final pub, the World's End. Yeah, like a second unexpected thing that you don't see coming is the idea that they don't actually win in the end. The world, as we know it, does actually end. Like, the world gets destroyed.
And two of his friends are dead.
It's just a complete and utter disaster. In the end, that sort of coda, in the end, you can almost envision like there's another movie there somewhere. Like there's a whole nother story. Him as the man in black going across the wastes of the world. I see Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz being talked about way more than I do The World's End, but I really enjoyed this one. I also, like you, I like the idea of it taking the sudden turn, but when you couple that with the fact that it's also a movie about friendship and old friends getting together and that kind of thing, to me it kind of feels like taking, like a Stand By Me or a Goonies and fast forwarding 30 or 40 years, then dealing with the consequences of adulthood. Even though it's a comedy action science fiction movie, it's also kind of an honest depiction of those issues. Yeah, it's good stuff, and I'm glad you enjoy it. I hope that more people will check it out.
Yeah, and I don't feel like, even though the surprise is ruined, you watch this and you feel like, oh, well, I shouldn't have watched it because it ruined a spoiler. It's not, because it happens so quick when you watch it the first time. You're surprised and you're spending so much time trying to figure out what's going on. I think it'll be fun to watch it the second time now, knowing, because I'll notice things along the way.
You definitely will. Yeah,
and there's got to be stuff I missed, I'm sure.
And yeah, and I do agree with you. Anyone who's watched this who thinks it sounds interesting, but they're worried that, well, it's got spoiled, so now I'm going to miss that big thing. The main reason why I said not to look into it beforehand is I wanted you to have that moment. But you can know about the turn and still know that it's coming and still completely enjoy the whole thing.
I still watch From Dusk Till Dawn, and I know exactly what happens every time.
That wraps up The World's End, and I guess that means...
it can only mean one thing. It is time for Eric to watch something.
Oh my, I wonder what it'll be.
You, Eric, will be watching Ice Pirates.
Ice Pirates!
It is pirates in space who are searching for a planet that supposedly is covered in water, and they're ice pirates.
All right, so Ice Pirates, pirates in space. I'm totally down for that.
So thanks everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed this week's movie club. Feel free to like, subscribe. You check out our Patreon at Nerd Out With Me. And make sure you leave some comments below, because we actually do this so that we can hear back from you, whether you watched along with us or you just enjoy watching. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Thanks for hanging out in the movie club.